Hi there folks, welcome back. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage YouTube channel, and you are looking at the underside, the underbelly of the Singer Touch and Sew 600E, what I call, and this is me calling it that, you may agree or not, and that's okay. I believe this is the swan song of the Singer Sewing Machine Company. It's the last of the great Singer sewing machines. And what do I mean by that? Because it's still made with all metal, mostly all metal. And in the pieces that are under the most stress, the mechanical drivetrain, you see metal gears. Lots of lovely metal, as you would see, of course, if you were looking at the underside of a Singer 500 series, Slant-O-Matic 400 series, or the 301 Singer that started it all. Okay, so what are we doing? We're actually going to, I've already taken care of, if you saw the last video, I already took care of this lever. It's been lubricated, and that's because I had to get it moving to get the plate up to clean the feed dogs, and that's because, unlike most every other sewing machine ever created, if you can lower the feed dogs on a sewing machine, you don't typically raise the plate, you lower the dogs. And you can wait to service the feed dog lowering mechanism when you get below the machine. But I couldn't do that because you have to be able to move that needle plate, which is controlled down here, and you cannot do that. You cannot clean the feed dogs without doing that. So I am going to go ahead and I will show you how I approach lubricating the underside of this machine. And I'm going to start by, again, you'll see two metal gears here, and they are at two axes. One is rotating toward us. That is the obligatory dropping of one of my tools on the floor. You know, it wouldn't be the same without that. Okay, one of the gears is rotating toward us, and the other one is rotating on a flat plane that you can see. So I'm going to take and just put a little ribbon of grease. Now you might say, well, you should put a lot of grease. No, I shouldn't. And the reason is, because I've done it when I first started this hobby, just remember that when you're trying to get something to, when you're trying to put grease into gears, the gears can only hold a fairly small amount of grease. And you can see as I just turning these gears back and forth, well, yeah, the reason you see grease sort of forming in sort of a shape here is because the gears can't hold more than that. So yeah, you can try putting the grease back in there, but as soon as the gears come together, what do? They squeeze it back out again. So as long as your gears have been, fully greased, any of this extra grease is going to eventually get slung off of your machine. It's going to happen because there's nowhere else for the grease to go. On a Singer 201, that's a little different because on the 201 there's a little cup that holds. Actually, it holds. It's there for the oil that gets slung. When gears spin, they're gonna sling whatever they got. So again, that's plenty of grease. I know it doesn't look like much. Let's get you can see there, right? And if I, again, turning this, you can see that's all you need. And that's all the machine can hold. It's not like it wants more. It has nowhere to put more, and that's okay. The other thing to note is that when you apply grease to any part of your machine that needs it, grease gets applied far less often than does sewing machine oil. And so that's a helpful thing, right? So you don't have to grease your machine nearly as often as you would need to oil it for it to function properly. Okay, now let's see what we got here. Up here, we've got the same. We have again. This is what is called in a rear-wheel drive truck or car a differential, right? It's where two gears are meshing together. And here I'm just going to put a little dab of grease there, And I'm going to turn the gears, and then I'm going to put another. And I'm going to turn the gears again. And what I'm doing is just basically making sure that every one of the grooves in these gears has received grease, so that every one of those grooves is holding grease. But again, those grooves are tiny, so they don't hold that much, right? You say, well, you know, what's going to happen? Well, remember, the grease, some of the grease will sling off, but only the grease that the gears cannot hold. This is why you don't need a lot, because, you know, even if you're feeling generous with the grease, the machine can't hold it. It doesn't have any place for it. But it's okay, because once we've gotten grease, and you'll see a little bit of it is sitting here on the side, you know, and that's not really going to hurt anything. But again, when the gears start spinning quickly, you're going to have some slinging, right? Like a big dog when it's got, you know, I call it dog slobber. You know, it's going to sling the grease until it's happy. And if I come back and look at this machine after it's been running, you know, some of the grease that's been applied will have slung off, and that basically the gears will look wet, and that's what they should look like. But unlike oil, because you could put oil on the gears, but that's going to require application a lot more often, and that's not what the company directed for us to do. So, and I'm going to put a little here. Now, I know that the company called for sewing oil on the 201's gears. So I'm going to go back and check to make sure that, because if Singer said, and I'm going to look in both the owner's manual, as you should as well when you get a machine first time, and there may or may not be a service manual for this machine. I don't know. There are some available for Singers, but I haven't looked for one for this. And if Singer said no, you should use oil, then I'll simply come back with some sewing oil. Okay, so, well, that wasn't very much grease, was it? One tub of grease will probably last you a lifetime. I mean, I've got a small tub and a larger one, and I don't really expect to run out anytime soon. It just isn't something that you need a massive amount of. Okay. What's left? Well, we still need a sewing machine oil. Of course we do. And I've already oiled this piece up here, which is a pivot pin for the device, the lever that raises the plate. So what's left? All right, let's come around and look. Again, use your hand wheel if you're not sure, if you don't have a manual. Notice that this piece of steel is moving against this. I'm going to put some oil there. Now again, if your machine has been running really well, same thing over here. If your machine has been running great and you're just doing normal oiling, 1 drop is plenty. Even if you don't think it's enough, it is. And come right over here. The reason you see me adding more than 1 drop, as I've mentioned in the past, is because I do not know when the last time this machine was oiled. And as is the case with almost every machine I've ever worked on, usually that means they haven't been oiled in decades. And they are way overdue. Okay, and I've got, again, more. These look like hinges, but they're pivot points for the machine where, again, metal's moving against metal. And even if it doesn't look like it's moving very much, if it's moving at all, you need to have sewing machine oil. And I have videos that, after many years of people asking me, I have videos on what is sewing machine oil, what is sewing machine grease. And don't forget that you often have another shaft often in the back. Sometimes it's above and sometimes it's down here below. So you make sure that that gets oiled, because again, you can see it moving, right? So it needs to be oiled, taken care of. All right, we've got one here. Now this one looks wet, but that's because in the past grease has just sort of slung on it and didn't hurt anything. But I want to make sure that it has the oil that it was meant to have. Let's see here. We're going to go ahead and oil this side. And don't forget, you have a whole other side over here. Make sure that it's going to show up right there. And let's see, right here. I don't know if that shows up for you folks. Let's see. There. It's actually right there. And if you do this and you think, oh, let's say you oiled your machine and you missed the spot, or you watch my video and you're like, oh wait, I forgot that spot. If your machine is functioning, you should go ahead and get it oiled. But again, the purpose of doing this on a regular basis is to make sure that your machine has access to all the power that it was designed to use to help you sew, especially when you're sewing heavier items. And you know, the machine will still form a stitch, but it's going to have to work harder without sewing machine oil. That's what it was designed for. Okay, all right, are we home free yet? No, we gonna go right here. There's a little, sometimes you'll see a hole here, and that usually is an access hole for oil, right? And down here, there's a spot, and over here, I've already done those in the back, and then over here. All right, so this should be, you guys tell me if I missed a spot, this should be a happy machine. Moving the hand wheels a lot easier. Now, well, granted, I'm not engaging the worm gear. The motor's out at the moment. But, again, this is something that you want to do. And, by the way, did any of you notice this? This piece right here. Now, I put some grease here. And I believe that this is related somehow. Somehow this is related, I think, to the bobbin system. And I'm going to do a different video on that, because if you're not aware currently, what makes a touch and sew so innovative, and to my mind, again, this is my own personal opinion, one of the greatest innovations that Singer or any company ever made, and one of really Singer's last great innovation. It has to do with how the bobbin works. We're going to talk about that as I continue to focus on waking up a early 1960s Singer Touch and Sew, which is really a 600 series Slant-O-Matic. And I have to go back and look at the manual to see if Singer was even using the term Slant-O-Matic. It was so popular with the Singer 301, and I think they used it on the 400, 500 series. But again, we get into the 60s, and I know many people will say, you may say to yourself, well, back in the 60s and the 70s, things were made better. Well, it's relative. They were made better. When I say they, I'm talking about consumer products. They were made better than they are today. But again, the slow, sad fall into mediocrity and eventually into disposability, it didn't happen all at once. It actually starts, you know, for sewing machines, it actually begins for some companies in the late 50s and certainly by the 1960s. People who study the hobby of vintage automobiles will say that, you know, it's 1950s, which, you know, we may associate with things that are made, you know, with thicker steel, and yet attempts to cheapen products were already happening earlier than this. But for sewing machines, for what we are interested in on this channel, you know, it was starting to happen. By the way, I'll I thought I would show you this before we wrap up. This, sometimes you'll see this label, And the label says, this sewing machine has exclusive features which are covered by Canadian patents issued in 1949, 1953, 1955, 1960, 61, 62, and 64. So that is because, remember, I've shown you, as we've gone over this machine so far, I've shown you that there are many, many elements of Singer's prior Slant-O-Matic series. And of course, in 1949, Singer was registering patents for the introduction of their Singer 301 or the 301A. So again, Singer was really good about, well, we'll keep this design feature and ditch that one. Something else that's kind of interesting, I have seen labels on many vintage sewing machines, and this is definitely true of Singer's, where it will say, there's a sticker and it will often have like a little signature and a person's name. And it's basically the person at the factory that was responsible for inspecting it. I mean, and look here, today, by 1962, 63, it says, verified and tested by 2A-703, I don't know if that's another zero, I can't make it out. So you don't even see the name, right? But at least somebody was looking at it, supposedly. And I don't know, for consumer products, anything, have you ever purchased anything new that has an employee's sign off to say, I inspected this and this looks great? I don't know, maybe it does happen. Maybe it happens and I'm just, like I said, not aware. But if you're aware of it, please feel free to share that. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Whether you're new or a seasoned veteran of the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, please do consider donating to my channel. You can click on my Buy Me a Coffee links, any of those links, and donate to help me purchase more of these machines so that we can keep them out of the landfill. This machine, I actually bid on an auction site and won it, and I have to go back and look. I believe I ended up paying $60 or so. And again, that's, that doesn't count the time and the hours invested in doing the overhauls. But because very few of these machines are ever free, very few. And it's surprising how much people will want to ask for something that is, just a mess. This machine, I don't think it was a mess. I just think it was a little sleepy. And hopefully we're going to wake it up and we're going to explore together, because I am new to the touch and sew. I've been aware of it, but I've never had one come across my workbench. I don't think. You guys go back and tell me, did I forget? It's only hundreds of videos later, but I don't think I have one. If I do, then I will stand corrected and you will prove me wrong. But anyway, this particular machine, made in St. John's, Quebec, Canada. And of course, I believe the Anderson, South Carolina factory in the US would have had production of this model as well. If you have a touch and sew that you love or you despise, please put your comments down. And we're getting closer in, guys. I've been going through the overhaul process because I want to give this machine every chance to excel. I have never tried to sew or test stitch with one, so we're gonna do it together. If you've never done it either, or maybe you just got a touch and sew and you don't have a clue what to do with it, well, I'm not really sure either, but we're going to figure it out together. So I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.